we all want business, right? Anybody that's showing interest in wanting to work with you,
Yeah.
you're going to latch onto, like, if, naturally, right? It's an opportunity, but you also need to know when to walk away from something. I've multiple times get, calls off our social media or advertising online, whatever it might be, and just their attitude on the phone's like, you're working for me. And it's like, well, no, this is a team game. You need me. I need you too, but you need me as well. Like, there's a process here. Without me, you're not going to know what to do. Like, this is a team game.
Yes.
And right, you got my back, I have yours. It's a mutual respect between one of us. And there's a certain way to handle a transaction. Your goals and your needs will be met, but we have to do them in a specific way, right? And so, but I'll walk away from business too. Like, if somebody was trying to be very controlling from the get, no, we're going to do it this way because I'm Mr. CEO at my company and this is how we're going to handle it. Well, maybe you are in that industry, but you're not in this industry. There's a certain way that we need to handle it. And if we're not on the same page from the start, I'm done.
Real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed with reasonable care. It is about the safest investment in the world. Welcome back to another episode of High Value Discussions, where we dive deep into the minds of successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, and innovators in the game. I was honored to sit and learn from a man who has not only shaped the real estate landscape, but has done so at a level of integrity and passion. I'm talking about none other than one of the powerhouse figures behind the brokerage, Mueller Zanger Group. Alongside his business partner, they have been redefining what it means to succeed in real estate. Since 2010, these two have built not just a business, but a legacy. What truly sets my guest apart is how he's achieved this success with unwavering ethics, a commitment to transparency, and a genuine care for every single client. It's no wonder that 100% of their business comes from referrals and repeated clients. They don't just sell homes, their priority is to build lifelong relationships. My guest's story is one of resilience, consistency, and heart. Whether it's his relentless drive in the real estate markets or his deep commitment to his community and family, he embodies what it means to lead with purpose. And we are here to dive deep into that journey, from the early days of building a brokerage from scratch to the incredible success they achieve today. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Chris Zanger.
Early ages, when I was 2-3 years old, my parents divorced, right? And so I found, and both my parents very involved in my upbringing. I lived with my mom, visited dad on the weekends type thing, but my dad was around for all my sports, things like that. But I found myself with a lot of free time. Both my parents worked. And so while I was very active in sports, football, baseball, things like that, I also loved to get into trouble, right? And school was secondary to me. Everything was about fun, friends, sports. That was my priority. School is secondary. I wish I tried. Looking back, I wish I had done different. But it's who I was, And so, but yeah, at early age started with the baseball thing, and friends and whatnot, and then like I said, school was secondary. But and then moving on, right? I knew. After high school, barely getting through high school, getting on to college, and it was something that was very interesting to me. I wanted to do it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Was able to get myself through De Anza over a period of time, long time. Finally got myself to Chico, and it was at Chico that I realized that, like, hey, I can still have a lot of fun, and I can also buckle down into my academics, do better for myself. Like I've got to. There's something next, right? Yeah. What that was then, I didn't know, but I knew I needed to do good, And so tried a little bit. That's the best I ever did. it was at Chico in terms of academic. And so, yeah, fast forward, then got into, moved around. We lived in Tahoe for a period of time, then moved to LA. And I met, I did an enterprise rent-a-car management training program. It was great for me, but it was short-lived. I did it for 3 or 4 months, realized I didn't want to wash cars in my suit. So what was next? New acquaintance, mutual friend, this guy, Fred DeMisa, just started this outdoor advertising company, hired me just because of our connection. Grateful for it. I learned so much from that guy. And I was selling outdoor advertising, making 60 to 70 calls a day and just crushing the phones, not really getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And this is something that I learned, it was extremely valuable for me and still holds true to today, is everything's relationship based, right?
Yeah.
And while I had this boss, if you will, this sales management role, this guy was trying to like, oh, you need to go sell here. And the owner of the company, Fred, my connection was like, well, no, you're not into those type of things. Like it's all behavioral, like personalities, like you're into surfing, you're into action sports, like call them. Yeah. So I started calling them and then things started to click. Fast forward, scrounging up change to pay for gas. I was like, I need more than this. I want to make some more money, but I want to make big money. Like, what can I do? Father was in real estate development, and obviously my upbringing with him was good. We boated, we had a weekend house, like very privileged, And so knowing that at the time I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, but I wanted those things. Like, what's next? So I got into real estate, took my exam, failed my first test. I didn't put much time into it. Again, back to academics, it was like, oh, I'll pass. I'll be fine.
We relate to that so much.
Right? Yeah, totally. But I remember walking in to go take my test. There's 6,500 people in this room. I got super overwhelmed, started sweating like, oh my God, this is insane. Yeah. People are finishing in 10 minutes. I was there for an hour and a half. I'm like, what's going on? So I failed. I didn't pass, right? And so went back, tried, studied, passed, and so on. Here I am. We started in 2004. And quickly jumped on the wagon of being as busy as I could from the very beginning, and talking to as many producing agents as I could. Those that I trusted, those that were doing things right, had the right ethics, reputation, right? And so I started taking them out to coffee and lunches and trying to better understand what they were doing to be successful. And taking a nugget or two from them and then a nugget or two from the other person and so on to really form my own avenue for business. Yes. And, quickly within the first 6 months of selling real estate, landed a huge Westlake development company, huge contract with them where they needed to sell, I think it was like 28 homes or something. A lot of them were really close by here. Yeah. And that was huge for my career. That got me to understand how to, just manage everything. Time is everything in this business, and so how to manage that and be, perform at a high level without screwing up. Yeah. Right. And just having the right ethics, being in control of my day and also being in control for my client.
And going back to when you were young, after high school, I feel like all of us as men, especially, we always, everybody, it's not just men. We always think of like, what do we need to do? Because we have a duty. We want to have a family. We want to have children, but we also need to be able to provide.
Right.
So it's like, what do we want to do? When you were in athletics, when you were pursuing a venture or say a possible degree in college, what did you want to do? Because we always have an idea of what we want to do. Like me, I grew up since I was a kid. I just want to be a pro athlete.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I was grateful enough to be able to accomplish that. But now there's a different phase of my life. Right. But during that phase, what did you want to be?
So when I was younger, like thick of baseball, I wanted to be a baseball player. Without question, right? And everything was about baseball for me. And then I think like high school, I started hang out with friends more, do the partying thing. I'm like, oh, baseball's fun, right? But maybe I need a break from it. And at that time, I actually lived up in Washington for a short period of time. My mother took a job. We moved up there middle of my junior year, and I finished my senior year there. But when I was there, because academics wasn't my thing, I found this vocational school that did fire science. And I thought maybe, I'm going to be a firefighter. Yeah. Like, that's what I want to be. I want to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
And so I went through this vocational thing, like did some young volunteer work at the Bellevue Fire Department, and then quickly realized like all the blood and I was like, I can't do this. And so so then I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah, I really had no idea. And so that's why I spent so much time at De Anza, just kind of going through my GE, like general education, and trying to figure out like, well, what do I want to study? I didn't know. I didn't want to be a professional baseball player anymore. I didn't want to firefight anymore. Those are the two things that all I've been thinking about. Yeah. So now what? You know, so that was a tough time for sure.
Yeah. And then obviously the idea of real estate came into play. Obviously in the beginning when you were taking that test, it was just kind of like, man, could I really do this? Like it almost like, it just hinders you in a way. You're like, man, this didn't work, that didn't work. And now I'm in this room filled with all these people thinking that I'm going to be able to be involved in real estate, and then being in it and taking this test. In order to get into it, I need to pass. Right. But it is very overwhelming. Like you said, that word, when it wasn't going in your way, like you weren't processing things. But the day that you did, when it did process, you were like, I got it. What was that feeling like?
Oh, I was ready to rock. Yeah. I want to sell something right now. I'm looking at the commissions.
You're like, I want to get out of this podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah. No, immediately. I mean, I walked out of there, and at that time you were able to, you knew whether you passed right there on the spot. Like you turn in your scan, whatever it was, the Scantron sheet or whatever. And I found out I passed. I'm like, awesome. When do I get my license? Like, I want to go sell something right now.
Yeah.
You know, I was really, really hungry for an opportunity to go close a transaction. And so that was a big win for me. I mean, growing up as a kid, I was terrible at school. Terrible. I mean, I don't know how I got through high school.
Same.
In fact, I remember vividly my dad, same, right? And, you know, but some of the most successful people I meet all struggled in school. It just wasn't,
It's very odd, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so, as a kid, well, rather rewind a little bit, my junior year, my dad remarried. And I remember being in Hawaii when they remarried. My grandmother, we were sitting in the car, driving somewhere. I was like, Grandma, you coming to my graduation up in Washington next year? And she turned around and looked at me and she's like, no. I was like, what do you mean? Like, you're married? And she's like, you're not going to graduate. And that stuck with me it's still today. That stuck with me forever. So it gave me a bone to go get it done. And so I was able to graduate, but ever since then, like I've had something to prove, I think, to my family, because I was a goof off up until I was probably mid-20s, and then something clicked for me. And so, but anyway, getting that license was huge. It was a huge accomplishment for me. I passed the exam. You know, academics not my thing, but I got it done. And then it was like, okay, I know how to call people. I'm not scared of relationships and opportunities. Like, you put a nugget out there, I'll go get it. Yeah. I will get it. And so, so quickly got my license, couldn't wait to sell something. And it took, I think, a month or 6 weeks or something to actually get my license so I can go and sell. And I couldn't wait. And so finally that came, and off I was running, working as much as I could.
That story reminds me of a book that I recently read called Choose Your Enemies Wisely, how a lot of people who are successful or entrepreneurs and business owners, they are very driven by emotion. But what the book talks about is you need to have logic within that emotion. Right. So the doubt that you received while you were coming up when it comes to graduation, that triggered an emotion off of you. But what made you graduate was having logic. Right. Or I needed steps, I needed a plan, I needed a strategy in order to accomplish that. Do you still hit those moments where emotion still kind of hits you and you're like, okay, now I got to bring logic into it and be able to, in a way, surpass this moment? Do you get to that?
All the time.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not so much about those, but it's experiences where my clients to me are my family, right? They're putting food on the table is the way I look at it. Yeah. So I take each opportunity of the people that I work with, like I've got your back 100%. Yeah. I will always do what's right for them. And so that said, when the other side, I'm doing a transaction, is creating drama or creating problems when we don't need to deal with those problems, I get emotional about it. Because I know that it's disrupting my client's days or whatever. And so I have to check myself when I start to get frustrated and I react. Sometimes I need to check myself and say, hey, look, like we can't control this. It's going to be what it is. What I can control is how we're going to react to it. And so I just try to like settle down, and it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, first thing you want to do is stand up and like, let's go. Yes. Why are you doing this to
What's
my
up?
client? Yeah. Right. What's happening here? So, but I have to check myself and keep professional. And sometimes it's hard, you know, I mean, we're challenged weekly all the time.
So people think when they grow older that things just kind of like, it's more relaxed. It's like, that's not the case. Especially when you're chasing greatness, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and absolutely.
In your experience, were you, especially, you were so, I would say, eager to get it. Like, oh my God, I want to start making calls. I want to start calling everybody and making sales and just interacting with everybody. Was it an easy process? Because it was difficult when you were in that room taking that test, but was it an easy transition when it comes to actually being out there and getting the work done?
You know, the workload itself, like writing a contract and presenting it. And there's a process of where we need to, you know, do the disclosures. There's contingency periods. That stuff is very easy to follow. I think the challenging part is personalities. I think the part, you know, when I got in the industry, I was pretty young, and I found a lot of people are like, well, how much experience do you have? Yeah. You know, and that first 6 months was really challenging. In fact, I remember the first transaction I ever did. I remember I walked in, I worked with my father for a period of time, a couple of years maybe, kind of get my feet wet and whatnot. But I remember the very first opportunity that we had, it's like, hey, you need to go get this contract signed. It's like, hey, well, what is it? He's like, don't worry about the client knows what it is. Go get this thing signed. So I go over there. The client's like, well, what am I signing? I was so upset at my father. And so I remember going back and why'd you do that? He's like, you never trust anybody. You got to know what you're presenting. Like, that's on you. It was like, okay, so that was a big lesson learned. That was like my first week in the business. So I then pulled out all the contracts and all the disclosures to quickly understand like what it is I'm having people sign. But what I struggled with most, I think, was my age, being young, and people asked me for my experience, which I didn't have a lot then. It was new, you know? And so I just figured that the more transactions I can do sooner than later, the better. Now I can say, hey, I just did a transaction around the block here, or I've done 30 million, 50 million, 200 million, 500 million, right? So now, like, since 2004 to now, it's, you know, I think Matt and I are probably at 800 million, maybe 900 million in sales. But I had to start somewhere. I think my first transaction was 850, you know? And so, you know, I mean, I think that was my struggle, is when I was young, people didn't trust that I can handle the business. I'll get, you know, agents call me like, do you want to sell your house? And it's like, hey, I appreciate your hustle. That's awesome. Who do you work for? How long you been in the business? And I started, you're brand new. I was like, good for you. Putting yourself out there you're constantly getting rejected and continue to do it. Like, awesome. Keep it up.
Yes.
Right.
Have you ever made the mistake, maybe when you were younger? I mean, I feel like I've made a mistake where my ego got so big where I'm like, I'm pretty good right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when the numbers get raised, momentum is going good, success is coming your way. Have you ever made the mistake where your head got a little bit too big and you were like, I can't be touched?
Yeah. Yes. When I was brand new in the business, actually, about, like I said, 6 months into being in the business, was doing transactions. And, you know, they say when you first get in the business, you're lucky to do a few transactions in a year. And within the first 6 months, I had probably done a handful. Like, I worked really hard. I was showing property in the morning, then open house in the afternoon, back to showing property in the evening. Like, I worked 24/7. And I did that to fill my pipeline, to do as many I didn't want to be the normal. I wanted to be this, right? And so, like, how do I need to do more transactions? How am I going to do that? It's a numbers game. I need to be in front of more people. And so that's what I did. However, I landed this big transaction with this Westlake Development Company where we sold 28 of their properties over probably a year span. During that year, I was so busy with that, making so much money. It was closing 4 to 5 transactions a month. Like, it was just pouring in. And it's like, this is awesome. I went and bought a condo. I went and bought a new Tahoe. I was wanting a Chevy Tahoe, went and bought one. And so I rewarded myself. I was working hard. It was crazy. But what I found was, because I was just processing those transactions, because now they're in my lap. I just is a process thing, right? I'm just putting one on a week and selling it, taking contracts, and then putting it into escrow the following week. When it all washed up, I had nothing in my pipeline. Yeah. I wasn't trying to get new business. And for 6 months, I couldn't get anything into contract. And then finally I did. And then I got through that period of time and then crushed it again that following year. But then we had that big real estate fail in 2007. I didn't know what a weird market was like. I didn't save my money. I was going out to awesome dinners all the time. And, I was being fool. I was young and dumb. And so that was a great learning lesson as well. Yeah. So there's been a couple things that have just kind of grounded me, made me appreciate the good times and made me spend differently during the good times, save and put stuff away and think about tomorrow.
Have you ever been in that position when things did go not the way you expected, or even the market when you're like, wait, I've never been through this before.
Right.
What was the feeling like during that process for you? Did you ever feel like, could I keep this up? Could I do this? Because it's not just me that's freaking out. It's everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in 2007, it was a really rough market. I remember we had inventory was like 6,000 homes on the market. We're like 1,500, right? So, and somebody wanted to go look at homes in Cambrian. I was showing, there's 250 to 300 homes on the market. Now there's maybe 80 or whatever the market is. And so we were working like nonstop, showing 15 houses on a Saturday, 15 on a Sunday. And that's exhausting. It's so tiring. And not selling anything or getting something in the contract and it falling apart because we couldn't get the financing or the appraisals. And that went on for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Income was cut in half, and so I was like, what am I doing? I've been challenged and I still am now. We get transactions that get bumpy. Most of our business is listings. And so we get buyers that come in and things get squirrely and yeah, it's frustrating. It disrupts your day, right? And especially if it's in the morning. And you have all these things that you want to get through in the afternoon. And maybe it's fun. Maybe I want to go mountain biking or I want to go watch my kids play football. And the entire time I'm sitting there thinking about what had happened earlier that day because it's not yet resolved. Yeah. Right. And so it's still nagging. And so, but yeah, we're challenged all the time. But to answer your question I also know I've been in the business long enough to trust that a solution is going to pop up and we're going to get past it. Right. That we as real estate agents, all of us can put a lockbox on a house, put a for sale sign out in front, put it on the MLS and sell houses, right? But really what our job is to solve problems. And so I have now trusted myself, my business partner, that, okay, we've got an issue. Let me take a step back for a minute. Yeah. And most of the time we have the answer and we can just go get it done. But sometimes we're challenged like, haven't seen this before. What are we going to do? And make a decision and then sit on it for a minute before we make it final. Talk to one another, my business partner, Matt, talk to one another and to make a decision like this is the best we can do. Let's move it forward. And if it doesn't work out, it's not meant to be.
Yes.
Right? So just stand up and get through it.
I love it because it's reps. When things go good, when things go bad, regardless, it's just reps.
Right.
Do you look at your industry, because there's a lot of brokers, there's a lot of realtors.
Yeah.
Do you look at it as very competitive or very collaborative? How do you look at it?
It's very competitive. Yeah. It's collaborative too. You got a lot of agents out there that want, like if, we had a brokerage for a period of time. And the biggest reward having that brokerage is helping agents do better, do more, whatever it was that they wanted to do. Right. And most of it was to make more money, do more transactions. But to each their own. Everybody's personality traits are different, right? And so I would sit down with each of these agents to figure out what it was that was important to them. Like if you're into a hiking club or biking club, or you like to ski or whatever it is, like go be around those people, make relationships with those people.
We love competition, especially coming from a sports background. So you see what other people do. you might see when people are doing things wrong and things are doing right. How often are you kind of like, say, studying competition or studying people in your industry so you get to take things where I'm not going to implement that. Ooh, I kind of like this, but I'm going to tweak it in my own way.
Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly like when I started, I started talking to all the producing agents, figuring out what made them so successful and taking these nuggets from each of them, right? And not recreating the wheel. Why? It's working for these people. Like, and this sounds good. This sounds good. This sounds good. And these are all things that I personally feel good about. Like, I'm going to go do it that way. And it worked. And so, but yeah, today I still take these producers that are doing $100+ million in transactions a year, and take them to lunch. Right. And these guys are doing these high, like big transactions, you know, $6, $10, $20 million deals. So is that what's next for me? Maybe. You know, I like to work with the around the people that I am, you know, in my community, in Cambrian, my little league, football. And so that is my bread and butter, and I'll never, ever walk away from that. But maybe one or two of those bigger transactions, and we get into them once in a while, but to make it a consistent part of our production on a yearly basis, we don't do that. I'd like to do that. And so taking these guys out to lunch, like, how do you do it? And honestly, those guys are great. Like, they'll tell us what they do. Yeah. And nobody's trying to hide. And, you know, because to each their own, they all have their own business. It's relationship driven. Yes. And that's really what it's about. But yeah, I mean, I'm always looking to do more, do better, without disrupting my balance. That's the challenging part.
Honestly, a man who is so driven, a man who has, you know, been through so much success and continues to do so. But you also have, I don't want to say obligations, but priorities where you have a beautiful family, and that is top-notch, #1 on your list.
100%.
So I interviewed a senior vice president, Kathy Chow, of a public traded company in Nutanix. I asked her about that, about the blending when it comes to work and when it comes to family. And she says, I don't like to juggle both, so I try to blend them together. How is your approach with that? I mean, I feel like all of us, we struggle with that, but as time, we get better with it.
I used to, when a problem would arise or an opportunity to pop up, like, I got to do it right now. Right now. And whatever we were doing as a family or whatever. So back to my family is my priority, 100%. If they're content, they're happy, they're good, I'm happy, I'm good, I can perform better when I'm at work. Right. So, but that said, like, it's very easy to get sidetracked. If there's a problem, back to what I was saying earlier, it kind of nags at you. I've been better as I get older, wiser, whatever you want to call it, more experience. I know that there's going to be a solution. And if there's not, I can't find one, then it's not meant to be. And so I just I've done everything that I can. Yeah. I did the best that I can. But for the most part, there's always a solution for something, and we get through it. So I just kind of trust the process now, whereas before it would take forever for me to settle down, trust the process. Yeah. But now I kind of get to that quickly.
I like your mindset, because you said it's always like, it's a process. It's part of the game. It's not going to be like, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, because I know this is what it is. This is it's exactly what life is as well.
Right. So I think over the years, I've learned that with the experience, right, that it ebbs and flows all the time. And everything's very cyclical in our business, right? There's busy times, there's slow times. And during the holidays, it's like we're unemployed. And agents laugh about it. Like, you know, and the last couple of years have been different just because the market's been different. But usually during the holidays, it's really quiet. And so, but I now take advantage of that. I'm taking full advantage of the slow time to go ski with my family, go do whatever, or do nothing, work out twice a day. Right. So what I found works for me, keeps my mind at peace, is routine. And that is waking up 4:45, 5 a.m. in the morning every single day.
Oh, man's doing it right.
And like, and I have my cup of, it's very routine. And a lot of people maybe think it's boring, but I've learned that this is what works for me. And I do this so I can perform at a high level Monday through Friday without any hesitation, without anything influencing me. And so I wake up, have my cup of coffee, check in, look at my calendar, look at the emails, the things I need to do today, like process, okay, I'll get that done. go to the gym. I go to the gym to relax my brain, right? Go sit in the sauna, have my man hour with my buddies, and sit in the sauna, do my thing. I need that. And then I come home, I'm ready for my day.
Yeah.
And get the kids off to school, whatever, and then I'm hammering out my day. And I usually go for a walk in between that too, get on the calls, whatever I need to do, and I'll walk because it also refreshes my mind. But by the time I get back, like I'm ready for whatever the day gives to me. On top of the things I need to do, like we're interrupted all the time with problems.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm ready for those, you know? And so now if I continue to do these routine driven things, I know that I can perform when those interruptions come up and the things that I need to do. And when we're really, really busy and I'm working 24/7, I can handle it because I know that it's going to stop.
Yeah.
So you got to take advantage.
Yeah.
Right. But also in the slow times, take advantage of that too. We all need rest.
Oh, for sure.
We all need a break.
And going back to that whole thing where you can deal with problems so easy, I kind of look at it that way as well, because like when I pick up that barbell, heavy barbell and straight in the morning, it's like, what's going to be more difficult than this right now? Because I'm dying. You know what I mean? So it's like first thing in the morning, you do something so difficult, it nearly gets you prepared for the day.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always prioritize that, man. And especially,
good.
And you probably don't think that this is difficult for me, but what I've noticed when it comes to doing this, there's layers within people. I don't like to say we're better, one is better than the other, but there are layers of people, meaning you have put yourself at a catapult where I'm just like impressed. I want to learn from you. I want to sit with you and just absorb information. Even with you, when you are sitting with these people and you're so eager to ask them questions, what do those questions look like?
About just based on our transactions, or just
everything that you would say curious about the industry that you are wanting to know that you don't know.
So great question. Gosh, I think it's how they balance their day and what they do with their time. I think that's really important. Like for me, like my time is so valuable. I don't want to waste it on anything. The times that I do want to waste it is me going and having fun.
Yes.
And that's an important part of my day too, right? Whether it's working out, going for a bike ride, or going and watching my kids play football at their practice. Like I want to do that every day. And so what do I do during my day that allows me that time to go do that? And so I think it's that when you're talking to these high producing agents that maybe they're only doing 10 to 12 transactions a year, but they're doing 100 million. And so they've got great work-life balance, right? Well, sure, it's very like they're on call 24/7 during those transactions, but they are making a healthy commission. And so I want to learn from them, like what they do, with their time to gain those type of opportunities.
Yes.
And so that's basically what I seek out to understand is like, what are you guys doing to get to this level?
Yeah.
Because I'm burning a lot of transactions, maybe on average, it's 3 a month, you know, and that keeps me busy, right? But and I don't want to slow that down, but how do I do maybe a transaction less that has got a larger, you know, volume, if you will.
People like us, we have a difficult time thinking about the word retirement because I've noticed with a lot of people, they get bored.
Yeah.
Especially men, we love to solve problems.
Right.
We like to show up or something. We're like, ooh, what's this? What's that? Let me put this puzzle piece together. You know what I mean? Do you ever think about like, maybe things will cool down and I'll do a lot less, but I'm always going to be doing something.
Yeah, for sure. My mind needs to be doing something.
Right.
I do not sit still. I do in the evening when it's I call it my dumb time, where I check out. I'm like Instagramming and like, you know, but I need that just to kind of decompress from the day, right? And you know, maybe I'm on the couch, TV's on, I'm not paying attention to anything, but sending jokes to friends, you know.
Yeah. Getting into the whole family balance is a very, very difficult task. Did you miss, especially in the beginning phases when you started a family, did you miss a lot of opportunities when it comes to school events, when it comes to sports or so on and so forth? Did you miss a lot of those events? And then you had to realize, I need to capitalize on this because I cannot lose these moments.
Yeah. So I was pretty good about being at most everything. Coached baseball, the flag football, was at all of the kindergarten things and the school plays and stuff like that. I didn't miss a whole lot of that, but while I was at those events, this is when we had our brokerage, and you know, I was sales manager, recruiting, things like that. It was constantly being interrupted. My phone was blowing up all the time, so I wasn't really there. And that became a big challenge. And that is when our brokerage, people started reaching out to our brokerage like, hey, what are you guys doing? We hit like a certain volume, kind of were put on the map, and people were trying to get us to merge or buy us, whatever, you know. And at the time, I was like, well, maybe we need to look at this. Like, I can't continue to do what I'm doing. My kids at the time, I think my oldest was in kindergarten, first grade, something like that. And my little guy was in, you know, preschool. And I wanted to be at everything, but I wanted to also, while I was there, like actually physically, mentally, emotionally be there. And so, but yeah, that was really a challenging time. And so now I'm good at like just ignoring, like turn my phone off. I can be gone for an hour.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be fine. That problem that arises in that hour will still be there in 2 hours.
But you know what I've noticed of people who are really, really successful is they pass on their value. They pass on their experiences. They're not afraid to just pass it on, man. They're not holding it back. And then that's how I know somebody is just internally free. They just want to pass down knowledge and game. How often do you pass down information when it comes to even maybe somebody barely getting into the industry and they're curious?
All the time. I'll give everything that I have. Because they're not, to me, they're not competition. I think a lot of agents will look at that, but they're like, all of our personalities are so different. Whatever I attract, the type client that I attract is going to be different than the type client you attract, and so on and so on, right? And so, but anything I can give to help somebody get to the next level, all in.
Yes.
All in. That was honestly the most rewarding part of my career to date is when we had our brokerage and I was helping people achieve things that maybe they couldn't do elsewhere. And like, that was so meaningful to me and so impactful. I felt so good every day coming home, you know, or just being their cheerleader, like, good way to go. You got that job, you know, you got that opportunity together. Awesome job. Yeah. So that to me is so rewarding to give back. And cause I had a ton of help. My father was huge for me in my start of real estate. Very different. We did our transactions very differently, but he was a man of principle and always trying to help other people out. And so I just have been the same way. But yeah, I anytime, like I said earlier in this conversation, if I get an agent calling to see if I want to list my property and they're just doing a number game, right? Just calling as many people as possible. I'm like, good for you. How long you been in the business? Who you with? Like, how are you doing this? Yeah. You're new to the business. Like, man, you're getting rejected all the time and you continue to do it. Keep it up. Keep crushing it. It will eventually amount to something.
Yeah.
Right?
How did you bounce back from that, man? Because the power of rejection is real, man.
It sucks. It still is terrible. Right. I actually, so funny you bring that up and maybe there's more to the question, but I have a good story. When I was new in the business, there's a gentleman, Wayne Haraguchi. I don't know that he's still in the business, but I learned a lot from him. He was our guy in the office. Like, he crushed it, did high production, super honest, ethical guy, super happy all the time, great family, kids, wife, just perfect picture, right? He was awesome. And I was always going to him, like trying to learn, like, how are you that? I want to be that. And he initiated some book club or something. And I didn't read. I don't do academic things, right? I was like, but if I get to sit at a table with Wayne Haraguchi, I'm all in. I want to learn as much as I can from him. So we did this book club. It was I forget the name of the book, but Agma Mandino was the author. And there is this 90-second like little paragraph that he's like, you need to read this every day. You wake up, you read this every single day before you start. If you're having a moment during the day when you want to give up, read this paragraph. And so I was doing it like 10 times a day. And he also motivated me to go knock on doors. I used to knock on doors when I was early on in my career to see if people wanted to sell their house. And the amount of times I'd piss people off, like, what are you doing knocking on my door? Slamming the door. I'd have people walk me out to the street, like wanting to fight me. Like, oh yeah, dogs chasing after me. I mean, anything you can think of. And every day I wanted to give up. and I remember talking to him about this, and he's like, you know, Chris, like you're the icing on the cake. That person woke up off. There's something else going on with that person. They didn't slam the door in your face because you initiated that. Like there's something more going on. You just happened to hit them at the wrong time. So when they're irritated, smile at them, turn around and walk away. That was super impactful for me. Yeah. So anytime I get rejected now, which is rare, but if I do, like, because I know if someone's not interested, I just don't bother with it.
I know,
like I just see it. I see it from afar. I don't even bother. Like, right. So I don't put myself in that situation. But that just comes with experience. But early on, you talk to as many people as possible. But that was really impactful for me. And I remember people slamming the door and be like, oh, man, that guy's in a bad mood and happy and walk on off. You know, I'll go talk to the next person. Yeah. But before I learned that, or Wayne would kind of instill that in my head on a daily basis, I hated it. The rejection was terrible. Yeah. Who doesn't like rejection?
I'm kind of curious about this. Do they reject because in this day and age, people have such a negative connotation towards selling? But I think, why is it negative if it's valuable? It's a home. I always say it's not selling, it's educating.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
100%.
So why do you think people get, say, agitated or rejection and they're so angry about it? Do they think it's because when they see somebody trying to sell, they're like, absolutely not, get away from me?
Yep. Yeah. I think you get a lot of people that walk into open houses. Maybe they're looky-loos, as we call them, right? And maybe they're curious about buying, but they're not really sure. And, there's this open house. Like, let's just go take a look. And you have agents that are up on their heels. Like, what are you doing? What? But, just, it's like, hey, give them some break. Yeah, let them look, man. Like, let them go through the house. I greet them at the door. Yeah. I'm Chris. I'm going to tell you about the house real quick. Beds, baths, square footage, price, whatever. Yeah. Have fun. Yes. I'm here if you have any questions. And then when they're leaving, I want to know what they think about the house so I then can tell my seller that, hey, there's the pros and cons that I've heard today. And I can tell if they're interested in talking and they want more information or they're curious about the market. You can tell. Yeah. And that's when I will strike the conversation like, hey, you guys obviously looking like, what's your plan? Yeah. What are you guys trying to accomplish? Right? Let me try and help you with those goals. And so, but I don't bother if someone doesn't want to, if they come in here like, hey, and they just walk right by you, I'm done. I'm not going to bother with it. Like, why?
That's smart.
They're not, I'm not going to waste my time.
You're
right?
reading the room. Right. You know what I mean? I like that. So when they enter, you kind of get to see what type of person they are. 100%. Are they curious, want to ask questions? And if they're not, adios.
See you later. Have at it. Doors open. Please go look at the house. Like, I want you to look at the house, but I won't bother you. Yeah. You don't want to be bothered? I'm not going to bother you.
But that came through experience, right? Because everybody is different. You have curious people. You have people like, I don't want to talk to nobody. Leave me alone. Or somebody who's just jibbity and just like, oh my God, what's going on? You got so many different types of people and you got to adapt to every single one.
And you also need to know too when to... We all want business, right? Anybody that's showing interest in wanting to work with you, you're going to latch onto naturally, right? It's an opportunity, but you also need to know when to walk away from something. I've multiple times get, calls off our social media or advertising online, whatever it might be, and just their attitude on the phone's like, you're working for me. And it's like, well, no, this is a team game. You need me. I need you too, but you need me as well. Like there's a process here. Without me, you're not going to know what to do. Like this is a team game. Yes. And you got my back. I have yours. It's a mutual respect between one of us. And there's a certain way to handle a transaction. Your goals and your needs will be met, but we have to do them in a specific way. Right. And so, but I'll walk away from business too. Like if somebody is trying to be very controlling from the get, no, we're going to do it this way because I'm Mr. CEO at my company and this is how we're going to handle it. Well, maybe you are in that industry, but you're not in this industry. There's a certain way that we need to handle it. And if we're not on the same page from the start, I'm done. I'm not going to do it.
What are some red flags when it comes to individuals? Because you said the word transaction. There's bad transactions in business, but there's also bad transactions when it comes to people. What are some of the big red flags that you see when somebody you're like, I do not want to be associated with this person?
It's usually husband and wife where they both want two different things. And I'll start getting text messages from one or the other. Like you have to tell her that we're going to do it this way, or you need to tell him that this has to be important because I want it. That to me, I'm like, no, I'm not getting involved in that. Like I'm out. And that happens actually quite a bit. And some of it's pretty comical, but that, or, you know, somebody wants to buy a house and they're interviewing, right? And I'm on this Google preferred list, and when I get these random calls from Google employees, I love it. I'm grateful. I don't know how I got on it, but I'm on it, and I get a lot of calls from it. It's great. But 50% of them will contact, like, I want to buy a house. Great. Let's have a conversation. Tell me what your goals are. Let me tell you what the market's doing. Let me tell you the process, where we start, where we're going to end up. But always starting is, let's go get pre-approved. You got to figure out what you can afford. And maybe what you get approved for on paper might not be comfortable for you.
Yes.
Maybe you like to have steak dinners every single night, and your lifestyle's this, right? But you can only afford here. So you need to have those conversations up front. And if they're not willing to do that, there's something not right. Like they're not fully committed to, you know, to the process. Yeah. And so if they're not willing to go out and get, you know, share either their approval that they say that they've gotten pre-approved, or go and meet with a lender to talk 2 or 3 of them to figure out what they're going to do. Like, oh, I'm fine. I can afford a house. Like, I make a lot of money. That's great. I'm sure you do. But this is the part of the process. We need this to move forward. And if you're not willing to do that, then I can't help you.
Yeah. You were speaking to me via contact before this podcast that you had a partner, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, partnership is a very big thing when it comes to entrepreneurship, business, real estate, and any venture. But there's also strengths and there's weaknesses when it comes to partnerships, meaning I leverage, like, say, my brother is great at things that I'm not good at. Right. So I leverage that because he has a strength and I have a specific weakness.
Totally.
So what is your strength and what is your weaknesses in both aspects? Like, what does he help you on that makes you better?
Sure. So when and I think we found this naturally when we started our brokerage together. His name is Matt Mueller, by the way, Mueller Zanger Group.
Shout out to Matt.
All right. Yeah. Shout out to Matt. He'll watch this. I'm
He's
sure.
on next. He's coming next.
Yeah. Perfect. I'm sure he would. He and I started the brokerage, just he and I, right? So we had this, we were at Referral Realty. It was great. It was a great part of my early career in real estate, great company, a lot of good agents, learned a ton, but I wanted something more. And at the time, I started seeing technology play a role in our industry. I mean, I started with just a fax machine, right? We had fax contracts over, get signatures, fax it back, then scan to email came out. That was huge. Then it came into DocuSign. It just continues to improve. But at that time, it was like, we need some platforms. We need more. And we need to be in an open environment. I want this office to be big and open and all of us collaborate and we talk loud with each other. We pound the phones together, ring the bell when we get a sign or a sale. And so Matt and I went off and started this company with really no idea what we were doing, but we got it done. We did it, and we were productive, and we had agents, and it was the highlight of my career. But we didn't know what we were doing, and we just kind of fell into our roles naturally because, like, oh well, at the time I'd been in the industry for several years before Matt got into it, and so I knew the contracts really well. Oh, okay, I guess I'm the sales manager. If there's a problem, I'll step up and deal with that. Matt was really good, very, very detailed. So he's really good with our accounting, our books, our systems, putting everything. So our back end operational things, he was really, really good at. Not me. I'm good at talking relationships. If there's a problem, I'll navigate through that. So quickly, we just kind of formed our ways, right? Naturally. And that's kind of kept that way. Yeah. Matt still does our books. Like the other day, our payroll called me and I was like, why are you calling me? Matt's been doing this for 15 years. Like, this is the second week this has happened. Don't call me. I don't know what to do. I don't know how much I'm getting. I don't know what you guys talk about. Yeah. I don't know what you guys talk about. You need to call Matt. Like, let him deal with it. So, but then, you know, when it comes to contract stuff, I mean, Matt's really good at what he does, but he'll call me just to make sure, like, dude, am I reading this right? Right? Am I, you know, and so, but we're constantly, we talk to each other 5 times a day.
Yeah. If
we're not with each other, at least, I mean, we're texting all throughout the day.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a true partnership, a very trustworthy one. And I'm grateful for it. Like met through a mutual friend. He wanted to get into the industry, and we talked like we are now. He's like, I want to get into real estate. I was like, you got your license? No, go get that and then call me. I'm not going to waste my time. So he did. He went and got his license, called me. He's like, yo, I got my license. Let's talk. I'm like, oh, okay, let's talk. And so our families are very, very close to one another. He's my brother, 100% through and through.
There's a big responsibility when having a brokerage, but it's also about bringing in the right agents inside of it. So what principles are you looking for when it comes to bringing in people into your brokerage?
Integrity, reputation. Reputation's everything we have. Everything in our industry, right? So you do wrong to an agent, they're going to remember that forever. You do wrong to a client, maybe it's a referral client or something. So 100% of our business is referral related. We don't pay for leads. We don't do Zillow. We don't do like that. That is short-term gain. In my opinion, those are short-term gains that you're feeding something to get something out of it right now. And I see no long-term out of these. And usually those Zillow leads, there's no loyalty. They're just one and done deals. And but I'm not into, nor is Matt. We're looking long-term, building referral partners and whatnot. So back to reputation, there's a reason why 100% of our business is referral related. It's because we do right by our clients, right? And also with our agents, the peers that we're working with. If I make it a miserable transaction for somebody, they're never going to want to work with me again. There's multiple agents when they come out on, maybe they're pulling disclosures on our listings or calling, like, I'm not working with you. I'm not going to work with you. You're dishonest. You never hit timelines. Like you're out. Like I'm just not going to do it. And I'll tell my client through and through again, like, this is how the transaction's going to go if we work with this person. And so reputation's everything. So back to when we were hiring for Mainstream, that was hard, right? Because we lucked out, actually. We got very, very lucky. But when we just had these two like barbecue, you'd see in a backyard barbecue, these two white little plastic chairs in 2,000 square feet. We had nothing. And we worked from that to some cubicles and built, like, now we got to get agents. We'll take anyone right now. Right? We need agents to help us pay for our overhead. We're in the Prune Yard, great location, but we lucked out. We got Cassandra and Andrew first, and they were awesome. They were just like us. They are. And very reputable and honest, hardworking, there to do right. And then from that point on, we got a bunch of other agents. So we were a good family. Like, we were a true family at that place. And so I think it just kind of naturally grew that way. Back to personality traits. Like we just connect with certain people, right? And you can tell if you go on an interview with somebody, they're dishonest. Like, you can tell, right? They're just saying things. You're just like, that doesn't sound right at all. Yeah, it does not sound very right. So it's like, cool, nice to meet you. Thank you. I'll be in touch. And no, none of that, right? But we lucked out. I feel like our crew is very. We're a reputable company. Like, we're small, but we were like high integrity. Like, good group of people.
I love
lucked
that, man.
out.
Have you ever had to let somebody go?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think I can do very well at that.
I'm
honestly.
not. Yeah. Totally. I'd rather them just say, hey, this doesn't work for me. Like, no problem.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
how about
thank
it?
God.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had to let people go or talk to them. And like, again, keeping reputation's everything. Like, our brand was everything. And if you're going to paint the wrong picture of my brand, it's a problem for me.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely some discussions but we were pretty lucky. Like I said, the agents that were there, were really good people and wanted to do right. And were excited by the win and helping their clients. And so we lucked out with that. But yeah, there's definitely some like warnings, if you will, and had to let go of a couple of agents because it just wasn't working out. Where the transactions got really screwy all the time. And I'd find myself like, how did you get here? How are you in this spot? Like, you must have let this go for way too long. Those uncomfortable conversations suck, but that's part of our industry. It's part of what we do. Right?
You have to show up. You have to be able to have that energy, that enthusiasm, integrity, responsibility. If you're not showing those principles, it's kind of like, we're forced to let you go.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and if you're not teaching that from the top, what do you expect of your people, right? Like if you're continuously, creating this same message, like this is who we are, this is what mainstream stands for. Now Mueller Zanger Group, but this is what we stand for. This is what we're about. If you can't get on board with that, it may not be the right place for you, and that's fine. To each their own. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
There's plenty of brokerages out there, but for us, like this is who we are.
Yes.
And nobody's going to ruin that.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things is being a leader, but it's also a very, very big responsibility, but it's a responsibility that we actually genuinely enjoy. Going back to being leader, but also mixed with fatherhood.
Yeah.
There's this weird thing that I started to notice recently, that when fathers or parents are, say, successful, sometimes the children grow up and they start to realize what they have, and they think to themselves, I don't need to work so hard. But when I met your son, in a small period amount of time that I was with him, I saw his mannerisms. I saw his discipline. I saw his respect. And every time I see a responsible kid, I'm like, oh, it comes from the parents. Where was this kid? Where did he grow up?
Yeah.
Wait, who are his kids? Where are his parents at? You know what I mean? It always leads to that. But it's so interesting. I remember I asked Jeremy's brother this because we would have a conversation because he has a young boy. And he's like, man, how do we raise our sons to not grow up soft?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
for
within
sure.
you, your son is in high school, very, very disciplined, mannerism, respect, on par. Congrats to him. But how did you lay that principle, knowing that he did see success, but he was like, no, Dad, I'm going to start something of my own also. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you for the kind words of my kids. I really appreciate that. And my wife and I work really hard at that. I think the biggest thing for, at an early age, it's baby steps, right? Somebody walks in the room, you acknowledge them. You look at them, you acknowledge, say hello, shake your hand. You don't need to be best friends with them, but somebody walked in the room, say hi, and go back to what you're doing. And then it grew into respect, right? Like, hey, this person needs your help, go help them, right? And then that turned into doing good. You're in school now, like you need to try. Yeah. And that's been huge for me, because I look back at my academics, if you will, my career through school up until I got to Chico. I wish I tried harder, and I wish I could go back and redo all of that. But that's formed me, right? That's who I am today. But I see something in my boys, right? And I always think that there's room for improvement for all of us. And I'm challenged every day, whether it's in the gym, relationships with buddies, or something hard with my family going on. My father's fighting Parkinson's. And so there's all these things that we're dealing with that. And, I know he doesn't want to be involved in that. I don't want to be involved in that with him, but that's what we're dealing with. And so do your best. You're in this situation, you got to do your best, but there's always room for improvement. So I teach my boys that they all have terrible games, terrible practices, but like, how do you learn from that? What did you do wrong? Right? If you had a rough day, was it because you were tired? Well, why were you tired? I stayed out too late last night. Well, that's your mistake. Own that. Don't do that again. Right? And so, but I see my oldest, we'll talk about Blake because you brought him up, with football. He's found something that he's good at. He wants to play at the next level. And he's 16 years old. I remember being 16. I was thinking about partying. And like, I was not thinking about going to college. And like, yeah, totally. I was not thinking about, I played baseball, football. I was not thinking about what was next, but he is. And so I'm so proud of him, both of my boys. And I want to influence, motivate, whatever I can do to get them to the next level. Yeah. And so I check them every day, right? Blake, you got to work. You got to put in the time. To be elite, you have to do elite things. And I'm constantly giving that message to them all the time, both of them. My younger son, 13, he's got some time, right? But he's just starting to play with football, and he's on the border of like being first string, linebacker, and he just like battling for it. And I was like, put in the time. You have a day off of football, go to the football, like go hit bags, do something. Don't sit there and think like, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow will never do anything good for you.
Yeah, man.
And so I'm constantly driving them, and I know that they don't like it, and I'm hoping down the road, I'm not doing it so much too that I'm going to like ruin them from the sport, but but I hope that down the road they see the way that I motivate and the time that I put in to push and help them go to that next level. It's all out of love. I see something in them that maybe they don't even see in themselves, and I'm just trying to drive that as far as I can without them breaking.
From experience, my parents always pushed me to do elite things as well. Anything that you do, be the best at it, be great at it, period. I thought that was a lot when I was young. I was like, geez, relax, take it easy. I'm only a kid here. Yeah. As you get older, then you start to see the little fruits of it, the principles, the skills. You're like, oh, that was needed. This happened because that happened. Oh, you know what? You appreciate it when you get older. Maybe he won't at the time, but maybe in a year, a couple months, 3 years, 5 years down the road, you eventually do. And I have 2 more questions for you, okay? So let's say this is High Value Discussions hosted by Chris. This is your podcast. If there was one question that you had for me, what would it be?
I'd like to hear more about like your beginning to here, right? Like that would be my question to better understand you. Like like what you've, so listening to your talk, very well spoken, right? Like you know what you're talking about. You speak with confidence, and sure, that's natural, but like you had to have learned that along the way. Like you've done something, maybe it's a routine that you do in the morning or whatever it might be, but like you talk with confidence, and that's a hard thing to capture and gain, right? So like how did you get there?
I mean, going back to school, I was not literate at all in anything. I didn't want to be there. I took no advantage of it at all. And thinking back, like how you said, I wish I took advantage of those moments, because even though I saw back then as school as very, very unnecessary, I just wish I took advantage of the people, the teachers, the interactions. I just kind of like, I'm only here for playtime and that's it. When I got out of school, and then when I got out of being an athlete, I was like, okay, I need to develop this. It's not more about my athletics anymore. It's about developing my mental capacity. You know, I invested so much into my literacy when it comes to just say books, interactions with people that I have honestly no business in being next to. You know what I mean? That helps so much. That builds me confidence, because I mean, starting this show, I'm able to sit with people that I'm like, how am I sitting next to this person? It's a weird thing.
For sure.
But it gives me a level of confidence that I don't even recognize within myself. Even when I go back in editing, I'm like, oh, that's you. Okay. All right. I want to make it as natural though as, say, walking. Yeah. Natural as eating. Natural as shaking a hand, brushing my teeth, training in the gym. I just want to make conversations as natural as anything.
Sure.
But it takes time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And still to this day, I'm still reading. I'm still sharpening this every single day. I can't think just, oh, somebody complimented me on the way I speak. Right. Just like you said, a compliment, I keep them right in the middle. I don't get too high on it. I don't get too low it. I keep right here in the middle, because I still have to show up.
There's always room to perfect your tool.
Exactly.
Who you are, right? You can always add to your experience and like what you find your strengths and get those better. Ditch the things you're not good at. Like I'm not a believer of correcting what you're not good at. No, it doesn't work. Get it out of your way. It doesn't work. If you constantly battle with it, get rid of it. If you're really good at these things, do them better. Right? And so, but yeah, you're a man of confidence for sure. And that's hard to find. Like, and I
takes
feel like
one to know one.
You know, thank you. But that's I think to be successful in really anything, you gotta be confident. That's another thing I distill in my boys too. Like, be confident. You may not be the best, but you're damn good. And go out there with the mindset.
I saw it right away. I saw it right away, my man.
Thank you.
But brother, my very, very last question to you. Out of all of your experience when it comes to success, entrepreneurship, real estate, being a father, being a husband, what's probably one of the biggest pieces of wisdom that you would want to pass down to the audience?
Oh man, there's so many. The one that comes to mind right now is consistency. Showing up every day and doing the same, like being on, like, you know, I always tell my boys, this is a big thing in our household. You have something to do, you do it. The fun is second. You have to work. You have things to do. Grayson, go pick up your clothes, go clean up your room. You have stuff to do, then you can go fish and ride your bike and do whatever you're going to do. But being consistent. And so finding a routine that works for you and doing that every day. Don't get me wrong. Like my Monday through Friday, anybody that knows me well knows, like, I wake up this hour, I go to the gym this hour, I do these things, I go to bed early, I eat well. I don't drink. I'm very, very like particular about my week, very focused. Weekend, I like to have fun. I'm social.
Yes.
I'll have my beers. I'll eat out of the norm, right? And go to bed later, have fun, sit around on the couch. I don't ever do that during the week, but I need time. But that I found that routine, being consistent with that routine works for me, right? And so I got something to do. I get it done.
Beautiful. My brother, are there any closing statements you'd like to give for the podcast?
No, I really appreciate this, though. Actually, I was very nervous to come out here. This is my first podcast.
You killed him,
and there's a couple times I lost thought, but which is funny, right? I'm good with, but I'm not one to be in front of the camera, and I love to be social, and I can easily talk to anybody. But this I was walking into this thing going, oh man, just get it. You better nail it. And so thank you for asking me, because it put me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And now I feel good about it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Of course.
And
I can tell you love the uncomfortable, because like you told me on the phone, Daniel, I am not used to this, but I'm ready for it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a great conversation right away. But just like how you said, you are very valuable with your time, my friend. I appreciate you coming down here. You did not have to do this. You are a very productive man, and that's why I appreciate it. Time is my love language. When I give time, it matters. When I receive time, it matters.
Right.
So thank you so much, and I hope we get to do this again with your partner. That'd be a phenomenal.
Let's
Even I'm going to get him on by himself and then you two together.
I love it. That'd be comedy for sure.
Yes,
but thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. If you got a lot of value out of this, please do me a favor and support our channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Make sure to hit that follow button on Spotify to stay updated with our latest episodes. And if you are listening on Apple Podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star rating, followed by with a review. Again, thank you all for the support. Stay loving, stay hungry, and stay excellent.